Welcome to Table Salt. We are here with Pastor Casey Coates talking about week 4 of Bad Words, where we're specifically talking about anger today. And I don't know if how
I'm
many
the
people
expert.
You're the expert. I don't know if how many people caught your sermon specifically, but you talk about this kind of hilarious story about you at a football game.
Oh, yeah.
When you're like yelling at these Aggies in front of you who are, do you experience, well, for those who missed that, because they were at a different, tell us real quickly.
Well, it was the last time UT and A&M played in Austin.
Yeah.
And that was the first year of UT's football demise. We went 5-7 that year, coming off the heels of being in the national championship the year before, I believe. And so A&M wound up beating us, and these two Aggie fans sitting in front of us were just heckling us the whole time. And eventually, by the end of the game, I didn't have the self-restraint anymore to hold back, and so I engaged with them. And then Lauren got involved trying to get me to be quiet. She's also an Aggie.
Yeah.
And I grabbed her beanies off her head and chunked them.
And she was 8 months pregnant.
And she was 8 months
That's my favorite part of the
It was
story.
like 20 degrees.
20 degrees.
I grabbed
She's
my
like,
wife,
yeah.
2 toboggans off her head. And
Through them. So that's,
So, yeah.
that's did you, you're very, in your sermon, you're very honest about how you've struggled with that in your history and kind of how that has played out in your life. Did you recognize that as a kid? Was that something that you struggled with?
No, this is I think God often how he works in your life is he works on the big, obvious things that are like debilitating.
Yeah.
And then once he starts to get those ironed out, this has at least been my experience. Once he gets those things ironed out, then it's like, all right, we're not done though. Maybe he'll give you a break for a little while, give you a breather, and you're like, oh man, now I'm free. And then he's like, oh, there's more, friend.
Yeah.
And so that this has been a newer revelation to me of an area. So previously it was like my issues with lust and whatnot. And then it was anxiety and that sort of stuff. And then learning how to communicate with Lauren and honor Lauren in our marriage. And so those 3 things are like the big things in adulthood that God was refining me in. But then over the past couple of years, we've set our sights together on gaining some victory in the area of self-control when I'm angry or frustrated.
Right.
Self-control in my speech, because I get to a place where I don't care anymore. I don't care if my words hurt you. I don't care. Maybe you need to be hurt. It's kind of my spirit.
I think that was an interesting perspective to talk about this as like a self-control issue. You mentioned the fact that it's never the anger. Like the anger is
my counselor wife has taught me that so she's always trying to get me to declare my emotions. Like that's a big part of emotional intelligence and being able to navigate tense conversations and relationships is being able to identify your emotion. And so my emotion is always, I'm angry.
Yeah.
Or I'm frustrated. And so she's been teaching me that anger and frustration are secondary emotions, not primary emotions.
Right.
So we feel anger because we're feeling something else. We're feeling disregarded. We're feeling neglected. We're feeling embarrassed. That's a big one.
Yeah.
Feeling disrespected, whatever, that sort of stuff. And so, it's a little difficult because you have to address your anger. There's another layer to it usually going on underneath that you have to get to.
Yeah. I appreciate how honest you are willing to be in talking about this. I want to go back to you saying that God has dealt with, He brought you through all of these other things. And I know that sanctification is a process for all of us. Does it play out the same every time? Is God working in the same order of like, we're going to start here with conviction and then it's going to... I just thought it was...
Yeah, probably not. I don't know. It's probably, I would love to, if we could just get a big room full and let's just talk about how the Lord has sanctified you. What does that look like? That'd be a super interesting conversation, wouldn't it? Yeah. Maybe in your groups, if you're watching this with the group, y'all can just pause right there and have that conversation because that sounds fascinating to me. I do think, though, that wouldn't it make sense that whatever the area of your life that is on fire and threatens to burn down the rest of your life, wouldn't it make sense that that's the area that the Holy Spirit would concentrate his efforts on.
Yeah.
You know? And so I
sure.
think typically a lot of times people are well aware of the greatest area of deficit in their life.
For sure.
And I would say if you are a spiritual person and open to the work of God in your life, you're going to experience all sorts of presence and conviction from God in
Yeah.
that area of greatest deficit. Because it's the area that's most out of line with who he is. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's way off over here in left field, whereas the path of God is this way.
Yeah.
And so of course it's like it's obvious, it's glaring. And so yeah. I don't know, I think usually that's probably how it works.
Yeah. And there's always this this sense of, I guess it starts off with like the sense of conviction that leads to repentance.
Yeah.
Hopefully, right?
Yeah.
When did you, through your process, like, what was the moment?
Of what? Of
Of,
feeling
like-
convicted about it?
Yeah, specifically about your
You
anger.
know, all through my life, I have left conversations feeling bad about myself and what I said.
That's
You know?
interesting. Yeah.
And so I've always known that. But then, I guess as I've gotten older and matured and grown some, I think about those conversations more. In retrospect, I deal with God with those and feel bad about it, and then come around and apologize and make amends and restitution and that sort of
Yeah.
stuff with that person. And so as I have begun to follow up more with those conversations, it's become more clear. It's like, you know, eventually I need to stop apologizing on the tail end
Yeah.
and get it fixed on the front end,
Yeah.
to where I don't have to come back around. And so that's a lot of it. And honestly, I would say, this may be pulling the curtain back too far, but a lot of it is geared toward the co-pastors. You know, I'm under their authority, and there are times where I disagree with certain, not serious things. You know, they're
For sure.
know the Bible. I'll just normal work stuff, and I'll disagree, and I'll light them up. Partially because they're great leaders and they let people challenge them, and they keep cool, calm heads and whatnot. But I won't. And so you ask them, there's been a lot of times where I've lit them up about things,
Yeah.
and then come back around and have to apologize. And eventually I just got to the point, it's like, that's inconsistent with who I want to be as a man of God and as a leader and as a
Yeah.
pastor. And I feel like I've kind of become a joke. I don't know
Yeah.
maybe they're more gracious in how they view me,
Yeah.
but feel like I've kind of become a joke of like, oh, that's Casey's hot-headed. We all know, everyone knows that. Just ignore him whenever he's going off like that.
Yeah.
Just ignore him. You know, and I don't want to be like that.
For sure.
And I think a lot of times well, I've mentioned this in my message, that a lot of times us who struggle with self-control in our speech and we're angry and frustrated, we're just like, I just got a big mouth and people know I don't mean it, and my people still love me and they know I got a good heart.
Yeah.
You know what you're really saying when you say that is like, yeah, the people in your life think you're a joke a bit. They don't take you seriously.
Yeah. That's,
You know?
yeah. That's pretty, I mean, and anger is such a difficult thing, because there's so many times where I think I don't know if people who struggle with anger feel bad about their anger all the time.
I think they do. Now they may avoid it. They may avoid the bad feelings.
Yeah.
But as someone who does feel bad about
Yeah.
it, I can recognize it in others, even in those. If they go around it,
At what point do you feel bad while you're doing it? Do you feel bad
no,
after?
that feels great.
That's the part that's awesome. Yeah.
Feels great to take a pound of flesh and
Yeah.
give full vent.
Yeah.
You know.
And it's so tricky because it seems like going off on people is such an admirable trait in our.
Is it really?
Yeah, because here, I'm online all the time, right? Like, this is the world that I exist in, and there's these things called Karens, and everybody gets mad at the Karens for losing their temper, except for when you lose your temper at the Karen.
Yeah, right.
And then you're just like, oh, you're just telling me
Yeah,
like
no
it
doubt.
is.
Yes, that is true. Yeah. Righteous anger,
Yeah.
however unrighteous as it may be.
Yeah. When
Yes.
and when I look at it, I'm just like, no, you're doing the same thing.
Yeah,
Here.
yeah. And I mentioned this in the sermon. I think it should be said that I'm not saying that all anger is wrong. You know, Jesus was angry. The scripture says, "Be angry and do not sin." I think it's possible to have righteous, holy
Yeah.
anger going on in your spirit. But that James 1 verse says, everyone should be quick to hear, quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger. For the anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God.
Yeah.
And so, it is okay to have some. I just want to make that caveat there that some anger can be righteous.
And then you explain the difference though, like one amplifies God.
Yeah, angry for the things of God, angry about darkness and sin or whatever, and the other anger about self. I've been offended, ego. You know,
I'm embarrassed. I'm offended. I'm hurt.
Right.
I'm
right.
And I what I love about this sermon is that you end with 4 practical ways.
Yeah.
And I hope that you guys get that. Make sure that if you haven't watched it yet, you can watch the sermon at YouTube. But I'm wondering, what about someone who is with an angry person? Mm-hmm. Like, how do you pastor them in this situation? What do you say to them?
You should probably have my wife.
Yeah, let's call her.
I don't know. I've just probably first thought that comes to mind is don't join them in their folly and sin and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And so if you see the error of their ways, don't replicate it. Don't join in on that. Rise above. And if they do come back around and own it and apologize for it, be super gracious.
Yeah.
And not, I told you so, blah, blah. And now I'm going to take my pound of flesh from you because I took it yesterday. So now I'm going to get it back. But just to be super gracious.
Punishing them for apologizing.
Yeah. Yeah. Now that they've come on their knees, now I can chop off your head.
Yeah.
Yeah. Trust them into the hands of God. It's God who changes these things in us. And so, I can imagine, like, when I went to see change in Lauren, so I can't really do it. It's got to be God.
For sure.
It's got to be God. And thankfully, she's connected to God.
Yeah.
And so I can just trust her in his hands. And so it's probably a delicate issue to deal with someone that you love. But if God's working on them, God will work on them.
So there aren't very many sermons that lend themselves to this thing I'm about to ask you about, and I want to make sure that we talk about it a little bit.
Okay.
I want to talk about abuse.
Oh yeah.
Because anger can lead to abuse.
Mm-hmm.
And what we don't ever, I don't think that we preach enough sermons because we have such a large church, such a large body. I know that some people are struggling with anger, and that anger is leading them,
no doubt,
to do those things.
Yep.
There's no way.
Yeah.
There's no way that somebody who's watching this is not an abuser, or somebody who's watching this is not being abused. What do we say to them? What is it? Is it 4 steps in your sermon? Is that like enough or?
No.
That's heavy.
Yeah,
I know.
Thanks for putting me in a difficult
I'm glad
situation.
it's you.
I mean, I think if you find yourself in a situation of being abused, that you have to reach out for help. You know,
Absolutely.
and any of our pastors here up at the church would be happy to step in and listen and address those issues. And obviously, that's a very weighty subject, and there's a lot of stuff that goes on around it, including legal ramifications and all that. But we are here for that, to serve people in that way.
Yeah. And for the abuser?
And for the abuser, there's grace in Jesus, and Jesus is the only hope to change it. And you should confess that. You know, the freedom from it doesn't happen until confession happens. And so confess it to God, confess it to others. And so likewise, come talk to us as pastors and talk about it. And I'm confident you won't find judgment and condemnation, but the
Yeah, for
grace of
sure.
Jesus that can free you from the sin. Because no one wants to be an abuser and hurt the people that they love. And most likely, almost always, they were abused
Yeah.
in some capacity.
Yeah.
And so there's a ton of compassion and grace for that.
Well, just thank you. We're already over time,
Yep.
but just thank you
Yep.
for your time today. I appreciate so much about the quality of your sermon and the vulnerability and the practicality of it. I think it's going to help a lot of people. So thank
Yeah.
you for that. And
Yeah, I hope so. I think it's an issue that we don't talk. It's one of those like sin issues that doesn't get discussed a ton.
yeah.
And so I think hopefully it really touches the people that God intends for it to touch. I think it's going to. And then I think we as pastors, please know that there's nothing special. You know this, you're a pastor. There's nothing special about us in terms of sin and struggle and all that sort of
For
stuff.
sure.
And so
You were
if
coaching me through some of my own just before this,
sure.
literally.
Whichever church or Sea Life or whatever, if the pastor's not up on stage talking about his struggles and his weaknesses, then he's a fraud.
Wow. Yeah, big words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's someone I could not trust because we're all broken.
Yeah.
And so I'm super thankful and honor our co-pastors for setting that tone since day one, where even us who are up on the stage as spiritual leaders can be super open about the areas of darkness in our own life. And I don't feel condemnation in this area because God's working on me and He's going to change me.
Absolutely.
Also, I've been to counseling now twice. I'm going to counseling weekly for this issue, among some other things. But this is the primary issue that I'm working on in this newest round of counseling. That might be part of people's journeys as well. And so there is no condemnation. Whatever your thing is, take it to God, bring it to your spiritual community or to us as pastors, and God can provide incredible freedom.
Absolutely. Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for joining us. If you want to find out more about how you can get help, maybe you are struggling with your anger, struggling with abuse, or you are an abuser, reach out to us. You're not alone on this journey. info@sealifec.com. You can email us, call us, whatever it is. We want to help. We have resources just for you. We love you guys. We'll see you next time.